Hello and welcome to another episode of Snakes Territory, part of the Foul Territory Network. Be sure to like this video if you're joining us on YouTube, subscribe to our channel, maybe leave us a 5-star review if you're joining us on an audio-only platform. My name is Jesse Friedman, alongside the one and only Jack Sommers. And Jack, first of all, how are you today?
Returning to the scene of the crime. Out here to unleash more of our wit and wisdom on our poor listeners.
Well, there certainly has been a lot of talk about Paul Goldschmidt returning to the Arizona Diamondbacks. That continues to be a possibility. And Jack, we got a report from our good friend John Gambadoro over at Arizona Sports. This came out on Thursday afternoon. Gambo said, I would say most of the heavy lifting with the Arizona Diamondbacks is done though trade discussions are still ongoing. I still believe they A, trade for more bullpen help with either depth they have on the major league roster or from the farm system, B, sign a free agent first baseman. So the latter of those 2 points, Jack, still makes it sound like Paul Goldschmidt coming to the Diamondbacks is very much within the realm of possibility. But then interesting that Gambo also notes the possibility of a trade involving a reliever coming back to the Diamondbacks.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully if they do make a trade for a reliever, it's somebody of substance that's actually like a lock to be probably better than 5 or 6 options that they have. Somebody like a JoJo Romero. So that'll be interesting to see if they can get that. As we'll talk about a little bit later, the prospect price for pitching is quite high. So trading for a reliever that's actually a really strong bet to be better than their in-house options is not going to be much cheaper than just going out and spending $10 million on one. Sir Anthony Dominguez just signed with the White Sox for $10 million a year, 2 years, $20 million. And that was too rich for the Diamondbacks' blood, as we talked about last time. I think that, the fact that they weren't in on a Dominguez was something that listeners to our show were well aware of because we talked about Hazen's comments about that last time. So we'll see where that goes. We spoke a lot about Paul Goldie and the other options alongside Goldschmidt if he's not available. So we'll just have to see where all that shakes out. We're not there yet, but we're getting close. I think that, Mike's not quite done, but he's still got several weeks before, the pitchers and catchers report. The full roster doesn't report until February 15th. So, we're talking 3 weeks, really, where somebody wouldn't even miss camp if they brought in a first baseman 3 weeks from now.
I think it's interesting in Gambo's tweet, he mentions the Diamondbacks either using depth from the major league roster or using prospects in order to acquire that relief pitcher. Of course, prospects, it would be impossible for us to speculate on which prospects could be involved. But in terms of the major league depth piece, Jack, if the Diamondbacks were to try to trade, somebody on the 40-man roster in order to land a reliever, you and I were talking offline the other day about who could maybe make sense there. It's at least a little easier for us to piece together, like who are the guys on the major league roster that they could part with. And the area of the roster that you and I keep coming back to is some of these utility guys who can play a variety of positions. The D-backs, of course, have Jordan Lawler on the roster. They have Blaze Alexander that we expect to also make the opening day roster. And then they have Tim Tawa as another depth option. We're going to get a little bit later into the show into our full opening day roster projection, what things would look like if the D-backs didn't do anything else. But as of right now, Jack, it kind of looks like all 3 of those guys would be well positioned to make the opening day roster. And maybe that's an area of depth that the team could deal from.
Yeah, one of the things that Jesse and I worked through was trying to figure out who would be more likely to be traded. And this is all speculative, so there's no information behind this. This was just a conversation we were having. And where we landed was it would be pretty tough for the Diamondbacks to trade a prospect the caliber of Jordan Lawler for a reliever. I mean, especially one with only 1 year of control. I mean, that's not happening. They're not going to trade Jordan Lawler for a reliever, 1 year control. And even like if you backpedal to the AJ Puck deal, although he was great for us, he was somewhat of a question mark. All it took was Davison De Los Santos to get him. It wasn't Jordan Lawler type player. So, and that's a pitcher that had 2 years of control. So, I mean, if you can find a relief pitcher that has 3 years of control, that is a really strong, sure bet. Good luck. But that's kind of the bottom line that they're going to be looking for if they traded Jordan Lawler. And Tim Tawa, just unfortunately, he had a pretty rough go of it over his final 140 plate appearances last year. And while I happen to believe that he can still do better and figure some things out if he's given an opportunity, bottom line is he doesn't really have any trade value. I mean, I don't think that you're not going to get Jojo Romero for Tim Tawa. So it's kind of like a Goldilocks zone there, where Lawler's trade value is too high to trade for a reliever. Tawa's trade value is too low. Well, that kind of leaves Blaze Alexander in the middle there
Yeah.
as a guy that, he's got certainly more trade value than Tawa, but most likely less than Lawler, despite his status on the team's roster last year. The way the market's going to perceive all that, I don't think that Blaze Alexander would have a higher trade value than Jordan Lawler. So, if they have to trade off the roster to get relief pitching, kind of seems like Blaze might be the guy.
It's a pretty compelling case. And I mean, looking at the 40-man roster that they have right now, it's hard to imagine who else could be on the table there. I mean, certainly the Diamondbacks, I don't think, are trading from their starting pitching depth in order to land a reliever. They don't have a ton of depth in other areas on the roster. Certainly the outfield at this point feels a little bit thin now that Jake McCarthy is not in the organization. So this is certainly not a guarantee that Blaze Alexander or any of those three guys is the one who is dealt. But on paper, that's an area where the D-backs do have some extra depth that they could deal with, or deal from, I should say. We of course suspected, though, Jack, that maybe they could get a reliever from an outfielder when they traded away a Jake McCarthy or an Alek Thomas. But as we learned recently, Mike Hazen was pretty clear. Like, the Diamondbacks just weren't going to be able to get that in a trade for, sounded like, either Jake McCarthy or Alek Thomas if they'd gone that direction instead.
Right. So does Blaze have much more trade value than either of those guys? Kind of doubtful.
Yeah, hard to say. I think Blaze has still played a small enough number of games in the big leagues that you can maybe dream on him a little bit more than those other two guys. I mean, at this point, Jake and Alek Thomas have both registered well over 1,000 plate appearances in the big leagues. For Blaze, that number's at 451. Have they been an amazing 451 plate appearances? No, he has a career 688 OPS. But we've also seen some power with him, Jack. I mean, I think he probably has certainly more power than Jake McCarthy by a wide margin. Probably a little more than Alek Thomas as well. He registered a 12.8% barrel rate in 2025, which is actually really high. Barrel rate is a generally a pretty good indicator of power. The issue for Blaze, of course, has just been the swing and miss. That he seems to just be a guy who's going to strike out over 30% of the time. His career strikeout rate is right at 30%. It was over that in 2025. So getting that number down is going to be a really big variable for him moving forward. And I guess if you're trading for Blaze Alexander, you probably have some confidence that that's something he could do.
Yeah, for sure. And again, we're just addressing the part of Gambo's tweet about trading off the major league roster. Obviously, if it was a prospect deal, then there's a number of other guys, and we didn't dig too deep on who might be the trade targets. It's just too difficult. I mean, a good reliever. I mean, how many good relievers are left to trade from one of the weaker teams in the league? Because nobody that's considered themselves a wild card contender is going to trade your good reliever at this point.
No.
So it's a short list. We've kind of been there, done that before, and I think that any trade that they make for a reliever might leave us wanting as far as the quality of reliever that they get back.
In terms of the signing a free agent first baseman part of the tweet, of course, Paul Goldschmidt seems like the very obvious name there. But we did touch on a couple of other options in our last show. Reese Hoskins is also a free agent. Ty France is also out there as a right-handed hitting first baseman that the Diamondbacks could acquire. So those are some of the names in the mix there. Of course, here, Jack, in the last 24 hours, there's been a decent amount of trade news around the league as well. We saw MacKenzie Gore traded from the Washington Nationals to the Texas Rangers for a package of 5 prospects. We also saw the New York Mets acquire Freddy Peralta along with Tobias Myers in a deal with the Milwaukee Brewers. Lots of movement on that front. And I guess inevitably people are wondering, is this something that the Diamondbacks should have gotten involved in? Thought it was interesting. Gambo spoke on this as well. He said if Corbin Burns, AJ Puck, Lourdes Gurriel, and Justin Martinez were all healthy, they would have very likely entertained trading for Peralta. The price was steep, and he is only under contract for 1 year, so hard to go all in without those key pieces to start the season. Price would have been high, say Lawler plus another top prospect, with no indication you could keep him beyond this one season. I think we talked about the idea of Freddy Peralta at some point, Jack. We definitely have talked about MacKenzie Gore as a potential trade target for the D-backs, but at least on my end, no surprises that the Diamondbacks didn't get heavily involved here.
Yeah, I mean the trade packages that were quite high, quite expensive. In Gore's case, I mean it was a 5-for-1, and pretty popular exercise it was to go through Texas's top 30 pipeline list and then match up that number with the Diamondbacks. Texas had a weaker system than the D-backs. They were ranked 26th. D-backs were ranked 16th. That kind of work is not really apples to apples as people think, because it all boils down to the trading organization's evaluation of the players. And when you're talking about past the top 1 or 2 prospects in a system, who knows what they're thinking? However, their analytics and scouting team pairs up to, evaluate this prospect or that. Guy may be ranked 18th and somebody loves him. And another guy might be ranked 3rd or 4th and we're not really that interested in him. It's just not, it's not really. Yes, they do matter a little bit as far as perceived value, and teams will try to work that as best they can. But the reality is, once you get past the number 1, number 2 prospect in every organization, talk about a crapshoot. I mean, it really is guesswork.
There was a report from Matthew Trueblood, who does some work covering the Milwaukee Brewers. This was a couple weeks ago. We didn't officially mention it on the show, but he did talk about how the Diamondbacks had shown interest in Freddy Peralta. He mentioned Jordan Lawler and Ryan Nelson as names that had come up in those trade talks. Jordan Lawler being involved in a Freddy Peralta trade, like I think that could be fair. Maybe there's a world where the Diamondbacks would have considered a trade that involved him. But Ryan Nelson, Jack, I think it's probably pretty safe to say the Diamondbacks would not have traded Ryan Nelson, who has 3 more years of club control, for 1 year of Freddy Peralta. I mean, you could make an argument that Ryan Nelson is not that much worse of a starting pitcher than Freddy Peralta, that they're actually in a pretty similar camp there.
Yeah, I mean, and even if you can't make that argument, the gap certainly isn't equal to Jordan Lawler.
Yeah. Yeah, that is very fair. So Diamondbacks pass on both of those guys. No huge surprises there. What we want to do next is just take a look at where the Diamondbacks roster stands right now. If they were to do nothing the rest of the offseason, which again, we don't anticipate. It sounds like there's more moves coming, but this is still probably pretty close to what their opening day roster is going to be, the pieces that they already have. So we're going to jump into that here in our next segment. Before we do that, though, I want to say one more time, we'd really appreciate it if you would like this video. If you're joining us here on YouTube, subscribe to our channel as well. Here as we try to push toward our next subscriber goal on YouTube. If you're joining us on an audio-only platform, we'd also really appreciate it if you would consider leaving us a 5-star review. That really helps us out. Is another great way to support the show. So thank you in advance for doing all of those things. So, Jack, let's go ahead and jump in to our opening day roster projection, the first time that we've officially taken a stab at this. We'll start on the offensive side of things with the starting lineup. We imagine the D-backs will be facing a right-handed pitcher on opening day. It's probably going to be Yoshinobu Yamamoto taking the mound for the Dodgers. So we're not going to necessarily try to get into the exact batting order, but you feel pretty decent that these are going to be the players penciled into that opening day lineup. Now, I'll read this off for our audio-only people. At catcher, we have Gabriel Moreno. First base, we have Pavin Smith. Second base, Ketel Marte. Third base, Nolan Arenado. Geraldo Perdomo over at shortstop. The outfield is Blaze Alexander in left, Alec Thomas in center, Corbin Carroll in right, and then Adrian Del Castillo getting the start at DH. Jack, I'll let you take it from there. What kind of stands out to you? What decisions might the Diamondbacks still need to make here?
Well, when you do this, you have to fill 4 bench spots. And on this slide, you can also see opening day bench locks, being James McCann at backup catcher and Jordan Lawler infield, outfield. So the first thing I'll say about the starting lineup for opening day, obviously Lawler and Alexander could be interchangeable there, right? If neither
Sure.
one of them traded, if this is where they go, maybe Jordan Lawler starts in left field and Blazes on the bench. That might depend on how things go in spring training. From there, though, we still have to fill out 2 more bench spots. So we head to the next slide. So what I've done here is I've got 6 players listed, and they're color coded. Light green is the most likely, and it's Jorge Barosa and Tim Tawa. Now, both of those players are on the 40-man roster, and Barosa is out of options. And Tim Tawa has some major league experience, and he can play multiple defensive positions on the infield and the outfield, not the least of which is first base. So if you have to bench Pavin Smith against a tough lefty, Tim Tawa might end up being your first baseman during that period of time, at least until Tyler Locklear comes off the IL,
Mm.
who's listed there at the bottom. If one of Barosa and Tawa or neither of them, the next 2 most likely players I have to make the roster would be Ryan Waldschmidt and Tommy Troy. Now, Waldschmidt has not played above AA, but we talked about in a previous episode how Mike Hazen alluded to the fact that, the door is open for anybody. There's nobody being ruled out from that Reno contingent of outfielders. So Waldschmidt clearly, being the top prospect on the team, he's got an opportunity here. If there's a series of injuries, an injury or two to the outfield during spring training, he might really get a shot there, as might Tommy Troy, who's played both infield and outfield. So they're not likely, but they're like next in line on that depth chart from what I can see. And then in pink below, we have AJ Vukovic and Christian Robinson. Those are long shot players to make the opening day roster. I don't think they will, but I just included their names there just so you can kind of get a sense of the separation. So bottom line, opening day bench is likely to be James McCann, Jordan Lawler, Jorge Barosa, and Tim Tawa. But I wouldn't completely rule out the possibility of Ryan Waldschmidt and or Tommy Troy finding a way in there, depending on how spring training goes.
I think my first reaction to seeing all these names together, Jack, is that there are a lot of quite unproven hitters who are in line to make this team. I mean, Jorge Barosa certainly struggled heavily in his time in the big leagues. Tim Tawa showed some really good signs when he first came up, as you were talking about earlier, but the numbers just kind of soured for him as the season went along. Jordan Lawler, his struggles in the majors are well documented. Even some of the guys in the starting lineup that we have, like Adrian Del Castillo, has not really put it together at the big league level. Alec Thomas is another guy who we've kind of been looking for that from him for a while. Blaze Alexander still maybe some strides to make offensively. So no secrets that this is a pretty top heavy lineup. It's looked that way for a while. It was certainly like that in the second half last season, but it's hard not to think of that. Just seeing all of these names together, and you can understand why the Diamondbacks would maybe want to add another bat here in the next few weeks. We shift over now to the starting rotation. This one's pretty straightforward, Jack. We've got Merrill Kelly, Eduardo Rodriguez, Brandon Pfaadt, Ryan Nelson, and Michael Soroka. Not necessarily in that order. We'll see how things shake out with how they want to arrange those guys, but I think it's pretty clear that those are those are the five that would make the opening day roster. And then Corbin Burns, of course, starting the year on the injured list. You hope to get him back at some point during the season.
Yeah, not a lot of mystery there. And again, don't take the order that I ranked them. I just put Rodriguez second because he's, seniority and highest paid. Brandon Pfaadt got an extension. Ryan Nelson did not. So I just listed them that way.
Yeah, that's fair. The bullpen is where things get a little bit more interesting, actually, quite a bit more interesting. This is not an easy group to project at this point in the offseason. The four guys that you have here as locks, Jack, are Kevin Ginkel, Ryan Thompson, Taylor Clark, and Andrew Saalfrank. Those first three names, pretty cut and dry. Ginkel, Thompson, Clark, all those guys are on major league contracts. It's guaranteed money. You're not sending any of those guys down to the minor leagues. Andrew Saalfrank certainly seems to have the inside track. You're going to need a lefty in your bullpen, and he's been pretty good for the Diamondbacks when healthy. So feel pretty good about those four names, Jack. And then beyond that, it gets much more difficult.
Yeah. And by the way, Ginkel, Thompson, and Clark all are out of options as well. So they have to be on the major league roster unless
Right.
they're on the IL. So again, I use color coding here. And I believe that first, remember, you have to have 8 relievers to open the season, right? So, I mean, they might be able to go 9 if there's a day off and they can skip a starter. That sometimes that happens. With days off early in the season, especially if there's an injury to one of the top starters. But for now, we're going with 5 starters and 8 relievers. Okay, so with that configuration, there's 4 spots open, and the top 4: Jonathan Loizaga, Brandon Garcia, and then Dre Jameson and Christian Mena. But I have Loizaga and Garcia in green, where I think while they're not locks, they're the most likely amongst this group of pitchers to take those 5th and 6th spots. Now, Loizaga, obviously, he's on a minor league deal. He's been assigned to AAA Reno. He's probably just got to stay healthy, show that his stuff is intact, and if it is, he makes the roster. Brandon Garcia, I think, would have the inside track over Philip Abner to be the second lefty. And we've all been pretty impressed by his stuff.
Yeah.
And then really from there, there's a lot of question marks of how they might do it. I mean, Dre Jameson, you would think that he would have an inside track, but again, he doesn't have actually a lot of major league success and track record due to injury. Christian Mena, I mean, I think they're going to need a long man. And he would seem to be the obvious candidate, but they may want to keep him in AAA to keep him stretched out. And then you have 5 pitchers listed in pink here: Juan Murillo, Andrew Hoffman, Gilbert Diaz, Philip Abner, and Juan Burgos. And again, I mean, like any one of those guys could step forward in camp and impress the team. And could they, leapfrog Mena and Jameson? Absolutely, they could. So, the way I would look at this is there's 4 locks and 2 highly likelies, right? 4 locks: Ginkel, Thompson, Clark, and Saalfrank. Highly likely, Loizaga and Garcia. So that's 6. And then you have 7 guys vying for the final 2 spots: Jameson, Mena, Murillo, Hoffman, Diaz, Abner, and Burgos, with Jameson and Mena probably on the inside track there, but not necessarily.
There's certainly this is not a immediately impressive group. There's no getting around that. The Diamondbacks have had so many bullpen issues over the years. I guess at the very least, Jack, you can say that there's some interesting names on this list. Like Gilbert Diaz has shown big stuff in the past and really seemed to turn a corner as the 2025 season went on. He started throwing strikes again, threw pretty well in the Venezuela Winter League. He has good stuff. Juan Murillo has good stuff. We saw how that can still be problematic for him at times when he struggles to command it. Andrew Hoffman, another guy they acquired at the deadline in the Randall Grichuk deal, alongside some other arms, just at the trade deadline in general. Hoffman did not put up good numbers, but again, you could kind of see how it would work. I mean, the fastball's in the mid-90s. The changeup looked really nasty at times. So if nothing else, Jack, there's a collection of arms that are a little bit younger than we're used to seeing, have maybe more impressive stuff than we're used to seeing. And I imagine there will still be some non-roster invitees who maybe join this list. But yeah, acquiring a reliever between now and opening day certainly would not hurt at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, as we're talking, I think clearly for the Diamondbacks to be competitive in 2026, um, they're going to need their top guys to stay healthy, number one, on the lineup side, right? And we know it's a top heavy lineup, and they're going to need their big four to stay healthy. And they're going to need at least one kind of breakout performance, if not two, from that position player group. And I'd say the same holds for the bullpen, right? They're going to need healthy, reasonable seasons from Ginkle and Thompson and Taylor Clark. I mean, those guys, can't get hurt 3 weeks into the season. They're going to need those guys healthy, and they're going to need at least a couple of breakouts from these young pitchers. I mean, you've got 7, 8, 9 guys listed there that are all really young and don't have a lot of experience. You need at least a couple of them to be good, and
Yeah,
so that development process needs to play out, and it hasn't been a strength for the team. They've had some moderate success in developing relievers, but they keep getting hurt. So it's tough to evaluate. So this is where we're at, folks. I mean, we're going to have to get those breakout performances. The good news is young players tend to get better,
yeah.
right? It's a relatively young roster, and young players improve. As we said a couple episodes ago, I mean, clearly, Mike's strategy here, and he even articulated that pretty directly, is make it to the trade deadline still in the hunt, and then get those injured players back, make a move or two at the trade deadline if they got a shot to get it in.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how it pans out for the Diamondbacks in 2026 and over the next few weeks as they maybe continue to add to this roster. To round things out here, Jack, we wanted to touch on Major League Baseball's top 100 players list that they've been gradually unveiling over the past few weeks. Of course, this is always the subject of much debate and controversy among fan bases around the league. Diamondbacks wind up with 3 representatives on this list. Corbin Carroll coming in at number 9. Ketel Marte at number 19, and then Geraldo Perdomo at number 24 after the unbelievable season that he just had. So the D-backs have 3 of the top 100, Jack, which is frankly not all that impressive, but having 3 of the top 25 is kind of impressive, and that's how this worked out for them.
Yeah, and it's great to see Corbin get that recognition for the player that he's become already in 2025, and they're looking for that or better. I mean, it honestly, the way it works out is they're kind of projecting Corbin to do better than the projection systems that we can see over at Fangraphs. So there's a lot of confidence that he's going to find yet another gear. He's only 25 years old, so that's certainly possible. It doesn't always work out that way, but 25, 26, these are the peak years. Right? I mean, peak Corbin Carroll should be right now and for the next 3 seasons. So they're probably anticipating that a little bit more aggressively than some of the projection systems out there have.
I believe Carroll was 7th. If you go by Fangraphs wins above replacement, he was 7th in all of baseball among position players in wins above replacement. So I don't think Corbin Carroll has to go out and reach some new level for him to line up with being the 9th best player in baseball. I mean, he basically was that in 2025. But as you pointed out, the projection systems seem to think Carroll will regress by, even a couple of wins. Most of them land in the 4 to 5 WAR range, whereas Carroll was in the upper 5 to mid 6 range, depending on which outlet you're looking at in 2025. So I don't think he necessarily has to go out and do something crazy in order to live up to this, but projection systems seem to expect some regression there. We'll see if he's able to avoid that. Carroll was number 32 on last year's top 100. So this is a pretty significant jump after a nice bounce back season from him.
Yeah. Well, as you know, I generally like to average the WARs. I just think that it just becomes too much cherry picking. Oh, I always pick the one that's higher for whichever guy I'm looking at. And Corbin ranked 14th in Baseball Reference Position Player WAR, with a 5.8 WAR compared to 6.5 at Fangraphs ranking 7th. And most of that's going to be a defensive difference, primarily.
Yeah.
The projection systems, ATC has him ranked as the 10th best position player with 4.8 WAR. Steamer has him ranked the 14th best position player with 4.6 WAR. And the Bat X has him ranked 22nd with 4.1 WAR. It's notable that the Bat X was the highest ranked projection system for accuracy in 2025. And that's especially notable because the Bat X, like Steamer, like Zips, is original content. For ATC is a average of the components of all of those projection systems. And ATC usually wins it every year because averaging the way they do it, the originally produced systems, generally is going to get you closer to regress to the mean number that's just going to end up on a macro basis being more accurate. The Bat X, though, is just like Steamer and Zips in that it's original content. I think Derek Carty produces that, if I'm not mistaken, but I'm not 100% sure. So the fact that he's ranked 22nd there is just a slight note of caution with regards to Corbin. They all notably project him, though, to hit 259 to 261, which is right around what he hit last year for batting average. So I think that he's got to maintain that power stroke. And for me, the next level is upping the batting average, cutting down on the strikeouts a little bit without losing power. That's it. That's the holy grail.
Be pretty amazing if Corbin Carroll could find a way to do that, given the strides that we've seen from him each season. It seems like he's just continued to get better. Beyond, granted, there were some struggles early on in 2024. There have been some bumps along the way, but you would not put it past Corbin Carroll to find a way to do that moving forward. Ketel Marte,
Agreed.
as I mentioned, lands at number 19 here. He was at number 18 a season ago. And then Geraldo Perdomo, Jack. Frankly, I'd be lying if I said going into 2025 that I ever expected to see Perdomo maybe even be top 100 on a list like this, much less top 25. And yet here he is landing at number 24. And you could make a case he should be even higher based on the season that he just had.
Yeah, I'm fine with 24. I mean, he needs to repeat, not
Yeah.
7 WAR, but he needs to repeat being 4+ to 5 WAR player. He was 3.5 Baseball Reference WAR in 90 something games, just under 100 games in 2024. I think he was a little lower at Fangraphs, like 2.7, 2.8. They didn't have him quite as high, but he was more or less a 4 WAR player over a full season in 2024. And so, he jumped to a 7 WAR player in 25. But I think that the floor for Geraldo Perdomo is as a 4 WAR player. And so, somewhere between 4 and 6 is a reasonable range there. I mean, he's certainly going to be one of the top handful of shortstops in the game. His skills, translate. I mean, that batting eye isn't going away.
Yeah.
I mean, he's walking more than he struck out. I mean, he's always going to come close to that during his peak years now. He may lose half a step on defense, but maybe the power continues. Maybe last year's power wasn't a fluke. I don't know. I mean, we'll have to see. But I can see a world where he's at least a 4 or 5 WAR player.
I don't really think any Diamondbacks players were snubbed from this list, but if you had to try to pick out some guys who maybe were just right on the edge, Gabriel Moreno is the first name that comes to mind. There was a number of catchers in the 90 to 100 range on this list. Shea Langoliers of the Athletics was at number 92. Drake Baldwin of the Braves at 96. Hunter Goodman of the Rockies at 97. Ivan Herrera of the Cardinals at 98. I don't think there's like a clear case for Moreno above any of those guys. Those are all really good players, or at least coming off really good seasons. And Moreno just has to stay healthy, Jack. I mean, we've said it time and time again. If he can find a way to just stay on the field and actually catch 100, 105 games, something like that, maybe DH every now and then to keep his bat in the lineup, that would really go a long way. He just hasn't managed to do that yet.
Exactly. And it tamps down some of his counting stats. So it just makes it hard for people doing these types of rankings to take a guy that, doesn't guarantee you 15 homers and 65 RBIs while catching 100 games. It's a little tough for them to do it. But I think that, if he has that healthy season, if we do get, close to 100 games caught from Gabby, or, at least 90 plus and throw in another dozen games at DH perhaps, then if he gets over 400 plate appearances, I think that he could move into that list.
I guess Merrill Kelly's the other name that maybe you could bring up here as being a snub. The last two starting pitchers on this list were Carlos Rodon at number 99 and Dylan Cease at number 100. I don't know, Jack, would you rather have Merrill Kelly than Dylan Cease? Probably not. But I mean, again, Dylan Cease for many years, the peripherals always seem to be a lot better than just the surface stats that he actually puts up.
Well, I think the market has spoken there.
Yeah. Well, I'm asking you, Jack. I mean, clearly the market would rather have Dylan Cease than Merrill Kelly, but would you rather have Merrill Kelly than Dylan Cease?
Don't ask me that.
It's a difficult question. Question.
Because of age.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about just for 2026, I think it's a coin toss who will actually produce the better results in terms of run prevention over the course of a full season. Actual run prevention over the course of a full season, I think it's a coin flip who would produce better results there.
Yeah. At the very least, you can make a case that's pretty close. Corbin Burnes is the other name that comes to mind. He's not on this list, but given the fact that he just had Tommy John surgery, I kind of understand where they're coming from. Maybe, hopefully, next season, next winter when they're making this list once again, Corbin Burnes has shown some good things down the stretch after returning from injury, and maybe he pops in somewhere in even the top half of this list if he looks anything like the Corbin Burnes that we're used to seeing in the past.
Hopefully he also still has an A next to his name.
There's also that. There's also that. Corbin Burnes does have an opt-out after 2026. So I guess if you're the D-backs, you hope that he's good, but not like outrageously good in the second half of the season. Still seems to me, though, Jack, like I don't think Corbin Burnes is going to opt out. You certainly cannot rule it out, but I would be pretty surprised if Corbin Burnes opted out after this next season.
Yeah, well, if he goes 9-2 with a 2.1 ERA and his cutter looks good and he's striking out 10 per 9, the way the market is right now, maybe he opts out and goes and gets $45 million a year.
Who's to say? I guess if you're looking for reasons to be optimistic, the fact that Corbin Burnes signed with the Diamondbacks very clearly because he wanted to be in Arizona, you figure that has to be worth something. Like he's probably not going to be the type of guy who just really wants to maximize every last dollar and is willing to go somewhere else to do that. You kind of think he would maybe prefer to stay in Arizona over going somewhere else.
Well, just keep in mind, I mean, like I know that, being home and staying home with his kids and being around was, vitally important, but he's been home a lot.
That's
and
true.
I can only speak from my own experience. I mean, I stepped back from full-time beat writing to spend more time at home with my family. And by this point, now my wife's like, don't you have a baseball game to go to?
Yeah. Being home sounds great on paper. And then if you're home like a really lot, then maybe it becomes less appealing at a certain point. We'll see how that factors into Corbin Burnes' decision next offseason. Be interesting to see that play out. But thank you all for being with us on this episode of Snakes Territory. We really appreciate your time. As always, we'd love to hear from you in the comments, so be sure to leave us a comment here on YouTube. Let us know what you thought of the show, any of the things that we talked about along the way. It really helps us out if you'd like this video and subscribe to our channel here on YouTube as well. If you're joining us on an audio-only platform, once again, we'd really appreciate it if you'd consider leaving us a 5-star review. You can also find us on social media. I am at Jesse N. Friedman Over on X, Jack is at ShoeWizard59, and our show is at Snakes Territory. And of course, Jack does a great job writing about this Diamondbacks team over at Arizona Diamondbacks on SI. So be sure to check out that platform as well. Jack, any final thoughts here as we wrap this episode up?
Just don't forget word of mouth too, folks. Let all your friends and family know about this great podcast that you can't wait for a new episode to drop. Let everybody you know that's a Diamondbacks fan. Hey, Snakes Territory, man. Get in there, subscribe, listen to the show.
Hopefully people like us. It seems like at least a few people out there do. So yes, we very much appreciate your support in that way for sure. And we say thank you again for being with us on this edition of Snakes Territory, and we'll be back with another episode very, very soon.